It's lovely to have your company this afternoon. It's just coming up to 10 minutes past 12. Let me tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about possibly one of the most misunderstood or just not even known about illnesses around today. You'll probably know it under different terms. It does have a variety of names. And people suffer symptoms in different ways. It is ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS. And what you're going to hear, or who you're going to hear from this afternoon, is a mum, a daughter, and a doctor as well in ME. And we're going to hear your stories as well this afternoon. And I have to say, I'm quite surprised, thinking about all the things that we have covered, that actually this is probably the first time we've talked about ME in any depth. So thank you first of all to Claire and to Emma for coming into the studio. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Claire, your mum.
Yes,
Emma's sitting next to you, and it's lovely to have you here. It really is lovely. I'm not going to push you with any questions, don't worry, because I know this is not a great day for you today, Emma. So
it is taking all of Emma's energy, I have to say, being here today. But she wanted to be part of this, and it's important that she feels involved. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So please, Emma, don't feel we're speaking for you. If you, if you want to come in at any time, then please do. If not, it's just lovely to have you here. Claire, tell me about your daughter. Tell me about Emma. She's 16.
She's 16, yes. She's a very resilient, very determined young lady, always very hard-working, never had been ill before. And one day she woke up and said that she wasn't well enough to go to school. And that's really how sudden this was for us. It didn't feel like a big deal at the time, other than the fact that she never had time off school. And she just literally never got better. Never got better from that. So. And
how old was Emma then?
So she was 14 then. That was over 2 years ago. And she is now 16. And she's still a very, very long way from being better.
Try and take the hindsight out of this for the moment, but as Emma's mum, did you think, right, okay, she just doesn't want to go to school today?
No, not at all. I have to say, absolutely 100%. We never doubted Emma, because she always loved going to school. She always worked 100%, and we were extremely worried at the beginning because we couldn't understand what could be the matter with her.
Yeah. I guess things like glandular fever or things like that.
Yes,
maybe,
we did think it was glandular fever at first. At first we thought she had a cold with some strange symptoms, and then people suggested that because it had been going on for as long as it has, that perhaps it could be glandular fever. We did take her to the doctor. That was ruled out. And then your mind does go to some very dark places. I'm normally very quick to go on the internet and look up things, and I didn't dare to in this case. I couldn't imagine what could be the matter with her, really. So.
Now, we're going to share stories this afternoon. We're also going to get expert opinion as well. 0345 30 30 961. A lot of people want to talk to you, Claire. Maybe we can share some stuff with Emma as well. And we have, I'm pleased to say, our expert guest this afternoon is Dr. Louis Naskell, who's a clinical associate professor in epidemiology and public health at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Doctor, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. This is a really, really difficult one to try and pin down exactly what ME is. How would you best describe it?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. ME, as it's clear from Emma's story and what you just mentioned, is a long-term debilitating illness, and one of the main symptoms is the exhaustion, a profound lack of energy that people feel, to the point that about 25% of people affected actually are housebound, and many of them bedbound, and this is all a consequence of a lack of energy, but also from many other symptoms, such as pain in the joints and muscles, problems with the blood pressure variations. People have difficulties very often in standing up because their blood pressure come down, and their pulses go up very quickly after standing up. balance problems. And so it's not about only the exhaustion, but it's about a malaise that people feel, which is quite profound and quite varied in terms of the systems of the body that are affected.
Because it's all very well saying, "Oh, it's tiredness, it's extreme exhaustion," but this is totally debilitating, and with all the other symptoms that you mentioned as well. I mean, are we any closer to knowing exactly what it is that causes this?
We are definitely closer than we were until recently, but still we don't know precisely what it causes. But there have been lots of research in the biomedical area now that are starting to give quite significant results in terms of abnormalities in the brain and the rest of the nervous system, including what you call the autonomic nervous system, which controls the blood pressure, for example, and our heartbeats. And also in the immunological system or our defense mechanisms, which seem to be deranged in people with ME/CFS. So we still, the picture is not yet complete, but there have been a growing body of evidence showing abnormalities, very physical abnormalities in the patients affected with ME/CFS, which hopefully will not be too far away from having a full understanding about this.
No, it's absolutely hope that's the case. Listening in, Claire and Emma have been listening to you, and Claire, you must have battled with so many different things before getting a diagnosis as well, which is what a lot of the people who've been calling us today have been saying is the problem of getting that diagnosis.
It is, and excuse me, it is very, very difficult, and I think that's one of the things that I realised by speaking to other people around the country. I think we've been very lucky in Southampton. We did get a diagnosis for Emma when she'd been ill for 3 months, which is the earliest that she could have been diagnosed. The chronic fatigue syndrome medically means long-lasting, and there has to be a point at which they deem it to be long-lasting, and that's 3 months, and that's exactly when we got the diagnosis for her. So we were very lucky, and we have been well supported at Southampton, but that's a postcode lottery. To be honest, it's not something that people experience around the country now.
Of where you are.
Yeah.
Dr. Knackle, if you could stay with us for a moment, because I'd just like you to hear Anna's story. Anna, let me bring you in. And I think, Anna, are you on the Isle of Wight? And it isn't you, it's your daughter who has ME. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. She's had ME since her early 20s, I would say. She's separated from her husband. She's got 4 children between the ages of 8 and 14. And very hard for her because, A, she has to cope on her own. She has to work because she's got to make up the 16 hours plus a week to get the housing benefit. And she finds that very hard. She doesn't have any help financially. And I just wondered if anybody knows if she's eligible for any help. Because she spends all her time trying to keep the job going, keep the home going, and then she's got nothing left to give to the children.
Yeah, and she's absolutely battling with this all of the time.
Yes.
I mean, Lewis, is that something that you hear a lot of the time as well? Is people who, and we're going to get on to the the help and the monetary help and how this is classified in a moment, but is this something that you hear all the time, Dr. Knackle, that people are just battling to try and get A, it recognised, and B, some help?
Absolutely, this is commonplace. We hear about this very often. One problem, I think Emma, going back to Emma, was in a way lucky to receive a diagnosis in three months, but very often people go to their GPs many times before a diagnosis of ME is suspected. And so this in itself means that people are losing time in terms of the right support. But the lack of recognition by GPs, but unfortunately, many of our colleagues still don't recognize ME, and I think more recognition is important from the medical and the health profession, but also in terms of social support. I think that there are because we don't have a specific diagnostic test, a blood test, for example, that shows you have this, and we rely on symptoms to make a diagnosis. Sometimes or often actually, it's difficult for people to demonstrate that they have as a debilitating illness that they do have indeed, and the social services and those people who could be given more support may be not willing to recognize in full the disability.
Which is what has been debated in Westminster Hall in the Commons today, in Parliament today, of the debate as to exactly where this should sit. And surely there should be more help for people with such a debilitating illness.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more knowledge in the medical profession and the among health professionals in society as a whole, of course. And the recognition needs to be a top priority. And I was very pleased to see the debate today in the Parliament. I wasn't there, but I heard about it. That there are people really now taking seriously the amount of suffering that people are going through with less than optimal support.
We're going to hear a little bit of that debate in a bit. We're going to hear from the MP Carol Monaghan, who was debating the PACE trial, which I think, Claire, you can tell us a little bit more about this. And it's sort of this long-term experiment looking into ME and CFS and actually where it should stand on the disability spectrum, because there is so much discussion as to exactly where it comes from and therefore the effect it has on people and what sort of help should be. And it's very difficult to say that I can't imagine anyone standing there and saying, well, there shouldn't be any help. And it must be incredibly frustrating for families, just like Anna on the Isle of Wight, whose daughter has ME, 37, and trying to get some extra help just to allow her to live her life. We'll hear more from that debate in a bit. For the moment, Dr. Knackle, I know your time is limited with us, so thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's share some stories of this afternoon. We've got in the studio Claire and Emma. Emma is 16 and is suffering with this illness. Claire's a mum sitting next to her, whose life over the last 2 years, I imagine, has been a very steep learning curve for you, finding out all about it.
Yes, it's been exhausting. It's been a fight that we really didn't expect to be having.
We're going to share your stories as well. This is the phone number 0345 30 30 961. 0345 30 30 961. We're going to hear from Chris in Burlesdon next with more of your stories on the way after Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin, until you come back to me. We're talking ME this afternoon, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or one of the other titles that you may know it as, debilitating illness that will just strike, it would appear, out of nowhere. And we have in the studio, sitting in front of me, Claire and Emma. Claire is mum, Emma is daughter, young woman, 16 years old, and we were just discussing during that record the last time Emma was at school, because obviously, 16 should be GCSEs, I'm guessing, this year. And the last time was about a year ago, did you say?
Yeah.
About a year ago. Gosh, and Claire, there was a period where you tried to see whether you could work some sort of 30 minutes a day, or...
Yes, one of the things that we were most worried about, apart from the education side of things, was the socialisation. And you worry that if they spend every day, day after day in their bedrooms, that they're going to end up with other issues. And obviously we wanted her to be able to see her friends too. So we did try for a period of 3 months to get her into school for 30 minutes twice a week. And the idea was that once she'd achieved that for some time, then we could then build it up to 3 times a week. And we rarely made twice a week, to be honest, and it was normally once a week. And when she did manage to do it, that was literally all she could do all week.
Oh, Emma.
It just took so much out of her that we were not really seeing any benefit to her long-term recovery.
I imagine you didn't really sort of want to be in school sort of with your friends and sort of feeling as you were doing either. It doesn't really help, does it?
Not really.
Not really, no. Let me bring in Chris, who's in Belston, has been listening to you. Hi, Chris. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi there. So,
Hi,
Doctor. Tell me your story, Chris.
Well, basically, 3 years ago, February, I literally fell out of bed. And,
literally got up one morning. Okay.
Hello?
Sorry, Chris, I interrupted you. Sorry, I won't interrupt again. Tell me your story.
No problem. Yeah, I fell out of bed one morning and I literally collapsed, and I was like in that sort of state for about 3 days. Then I was very ill, and I went to see my GP, and I explained the symptoms, and then basically it's been carrying on for the last 3 years. I've been to see specialists in Southampton Hospital, Portsmouth, and others, and it's been indicated that I've got CFS, and it's very difficult to live with. I can't set myself any tasks. I have problems literally from maybe carrying a bucket of water, which would wipe me out for an hour, or cleaning the car, that would wipe me out for the rest of the day. Simple operations are impossible. I can't make any plans, and I can't go out socially in the evenings because I fall asleep at the table or whatever. So, there doesn't seem to be anywhere that I can sort of talk to people and compare notes, if you like.
Yeah, and what sort of, when you say it's difficult to talk to people and compare notes, but what sort of reaction do you get from friends from before you were diagnosed, or before this this hit you?
Well, they're saying that I'm being antisocial, which I suppose in its real form, yes, I am. I've gone from being very, very active to not being able to set myself any task at all.
Something that Claire was just saying when she was talking about her daughter Emma is the socialisation of this, and
yes.
You've exactly described that as well. It's the feeling cut off, and then trying to get people to understand.
That's right. And I've tried to find somewhere, maybe the NHS, to talk to specialists in this subject, but to no avail. I can't find anybody or any agency.
Because Claire, you're being looked after in Southampton as well.
Yes.
I mean, what about support groups? Because obviously there's a big age disparity between Chris and your daughter Emma, but are there support groups? Are there people sort of trying to help? Something that Chris just said was, sort of someone who knows what he's talking about.
There is a support group in Hampshire. I think they're called Hampshire Friends with ME. They're for adults, so we weren't able to join that until Emma was 16. The issue that we have is that ME appears to be different in children than it is in adults, and it's more beneficial for us to be speaking to other parents of children with ME. But in Chris's case, he could contact this group. They're for Hampshire, but they're based in Hythe in Southampton.
Right, I've got that. Yeah. But basically, if I could just interject there, my doctor said to me that there are support groups for anybody under the age of 60. Now, I'm 71, so I've come to a dead end, really.
I don't understand why there would be a difference between those under 60 or those over. If you have an illness like this, you have the illness, don't you?
Yeah.
Maybe you should just turn up and say, well, here I am. What are you going to do about it? Chris?
I would dearly love to be able to manage the problem, but I can't. I can't get the answers, if you like.
Well, you've told us. Let's just see anyone who's listening to this. Let's see if we can sort of find, someone else maybe in a similar position. As Chris in Burlesdon, this is the phone number. Already a lot of calls on this one this afternoon. 0345 30 30 961. 0345 30 30 961. George Benson, Beyond the Sea. It's BBC Radio Solent. We're going to talk about ME this afternoon, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or one of the other titles that this illness goes under. With me in the studio, I've got Claire and Emma. It's mum and daughter. Emma is 16 years old. Was struck down by this, 2 years ago?
Over 2 years ago.
Over 2 years ago. We've also, I'm going to talk to her in a moment. I brought Fern, our producer, one of our producers, into the studio at the moment.
Morning.
Good morning, yeah, because this is something you've got experience with.
Yes,
as
definitely,
well.
yeah.
But just what I wanted to touch on, Claire, when Emma was first diagnosed, she was 14.
Yes.
She's now a young woman, very, very obviously. She's 16, and the difference in the way I imagine you communicate and treat a child at 14, what you tell them, how honest you are, very different to now. Emma's 16, and how has that been for you as a family?
It's been interesting, because at the beginning we just wanted to protect her. We wanted to give her the time and space to get better. And as her parents, we felt that it was our role to take on all the stress from that, the fighting, the getting the diagnosis and everything that she needs, finding out what she needed to do. And that then gave her the space and the time to recover. But as time's gone on, she's now classed as an adult in terms of her medical treatment. So she has the ultimate say as to what happens and what choices are made for her. So we've had to, over time, gradually bring her in, make her a bit more aware of the issues that face people with ME in terms of treatment choices and some of the things that are said to us about her, whether or not she's faking it, whether or not we're enabling that. It's very hard to
People have said that to you, have they?
We've been accused, yes, of making this last longer than it should. Yes, so we've had some strange things said to us, but I think it's a balance.
In front of Emma as well?
No, not in front of Emma. And as I say, it's only been really recently, when she turned 16 in October.
Yeah.
And we have to respect that she is an adult in terms of her medical treatment. So, and the treatment that she has at Southampton General, we're very clear to them that we understand that Emma is in charge of that, but she looks to us to help her make decisions about what she does and to explain the issues to her.
Yeah. So. And it's an incredible bond that the pair of you have, by the way. It's just so obvious.
Some eye rolling going on next to me.
It's lovely to see the way that your relationship. But I guess this also plays into the lack of understanding as well, Claire. When you say what people have said about you enabling Emma almost to be ill, which is such an offensive thing to say to a parent.
It is.
It's just unbelievably offensive to say that you are allowing your child or encouraging your child to be ill.
It comes down to the whole pace thing, really, that for 10 years now we've been told that ME is a psychological illness, and that the way to get better from that is to have counselling or therapy, which then leads on to exercise therapy or physiotherapy, and you are allowed to choose if you do that or not. So you're allowed to research that yourself. You have to become your own scientist. And if, when you've done that, if you make that decision that isn't going to be the right thing for you, it doesn't suit Emma's particular circumstances, or it's not a risk that we're prepared to take on her behalf, then you do then face allegations that you have withheld treatment from her.
Well, sitting opposite you now in the studio that we brought in is one of our producers on the team here, and I didn't know that this was the case for you, Fern.
No.
When you were younger, I had no idea. You're sitting opposite Emma now. Emma is now 16.
Yeah.
You are in your mid-20s?
Yes, it's actually funny because you say how tight a relationship you both have. It was the exact same case between me and my mum. She was racking her brains constantly as to why I was so poorly all the time. And it started off again with a virus. I had glandular fever, and it eventually, emulated into chronic fatigue and ME. And it was just a constant battle to get that diagnosis. Luckily, eventually it happened, but it was something that made me bedbound for a good few years in the start of my teenage years.
So it started, so you were a little bit younger than Emma.
From about 11 to 13, I was very, very poorly. I mean, I was rushed into hospital many times because they thought it was a more sinister prognosis. But luckily, I don't know if you can say luckily or not, but it was something that continued on for quite a while, and it still plays a part in my life now. I have to be very careful what I do. I have to make sure that I don't push my body out of complete, I know when my limits are, and if I'm ill, then I've got to take it slow after being ill because my immunity is so low. And you've just got to watch out for that for sure.
I don't know whether your parents at the time or your mum at the time faced any of the sort of things that Claire's just been describing. Because, I mean, that actually would have been a few years ago, so understanding even less than it is now.
Yeah, funnily enough, I faced it as well. I mean, at school, children can be quite mean sometimes. I was told I was faking it, that I was just lying. I just wanted time off school. But I remember I was telling you this morning, Claire, I was about 11 years old on Christmas Day in bed, couldn't eat Christmas dinner, couldn't open my presents because I was so ill. What child would want that? No child would want that. You wouldn't be faking it on Christmas Day. So it's just something that's terrible. And luckily, considering the debate today that's taking place in Parliament, there should be some research going into it.
Well, one of the people that's been speaking in Parliament today is Carol Monaghan.
Monaghan, right, correct.
And she's been looking into this. And then the crux of the debate today is to try and get it reassessed as to where it is, where it sort of sits within the disability spectrum.
That's correct.
So this is what Carol was saying earlier today at the Hall of Westminster.
I'm pleased that NICE are reviewing their guidelines on ME and have removed the recommendations to embark on harmful exercise. But I was contacted only last week by a lady who had been told recently by her GP to exercise her way to health. This highlights a huge need for education, raising awareness amongst both public and medical practitioners. So today I ask the Minister, can the next set of guidelines be drawn up through listening to those with ME? What plans does she have to introduce compulsory training for medical practitioners on ME care and treatment? Can she assure me that specialist ME treatments are not advertising graded exercise therapy as a method of recovery? Will she support proper funding for ME research? And lastly, will she work with colleagues in the DWP to ensure new guidelines are drawn up for dealing with people with ME? And I thank those living with ME whose voice is not being heard.
That was the MP Carol Monaghan within the last hour speaking in the Hall of Westminster, where they are debating the PACE trials, large 5-year experiment looking into ME and chronic fatigue syndrome. Let me just read you a text message, Claire, that we've just had from Liz, who's been listening to you and to Emma, saying, my daughter is 16. Like Emma, she's had ME since she was 12. It's very difficult for my daughter and for the family, but my daughter is improving month by month and is now attending school for 2 or 3 lessons a day. At her very worst, she was room-bound, and we would have to take all her meals up to her. She still definitely has good and bad days, but she is positive, and I know that Emma can get to this point with gentle perseverance. It is not an easy illness, but I'm wishing Emma all the best. And she's also said that if you want to talk off air, Claire, she'd also be very happy.
Thank you very much, Liz.
To chat with you as well. And Emma, and again, don't worry, Emma, I'm not expecting you to you to reply to this, but it must be difficult, and yet I would hope reassuring to hear from people like Liz, who has a 16-year-old daughter, and to see Fern now, and to see other people who are suffering or who have suffered with this illness, and know that for many people it is a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, your amount of time will be, you know, as short as possible.
We hope that by having taken the approach that we took at the beginning, which was to scale everything right back, give her time to rest, look at the effect of activities on her, and we did that before she was diagnosed. So we did that within about 6 weeks of her being ill. We hope that that's given her the best chance of recovery that she has. And we are immensely positive. I'm an eternal optimist anyway. And we spent the first 6 months believing it was going to be 6 months. And then we thought it was going to be 2 years. And it hasn't been 2 years. So we're now looking at the next statistic, which is for children. The average is about 4.5 years. So that's our next milestone, if you like. And it just keeps us going. And if we get to 4.5 years and she's still ill, then I'll find another one.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's an illness that's measured in years. It's not weeks or months, it's years. And 2, unfortunately, is a very small number.
There are other people who are suffering with this who have decided to make a very public stance about it, and to document their struggle, the way that they deal with this. And there is a particular film which you watched on Friday
night, yes.
Friday, Fern.
It was Claire that brought my attention to it. It's a documentary online called Unrest, which was created by director Jennifer Brea. So she was taking part in a PhD at university. She just got married when she was struck down with ME. So she was in, you know, the peak of life, you would say. And she felt so alone. Again, she had doctors describe it to her as hysteria, as very negative things. And she went into the world of the World Wide Web, I should say, and she discovered that she wasn't alone. There was a whole array of people that suffer with this illness.
We've got a bit of the trailer from the film. This is an award-winning film that I think was premiered at the Sundance.
That's correct,
Festival. Yes. So this is a little bit of the trailer of the film, and then we'll hear from Claire next as to what you want to do with the film, Claire.
From as early as I can remember, I wanted to swallow the world whole. Anything was possible. I just thought I would have more time.
I don't know what I did to myself. I don't think I can get up off the couch. I feel like my brain is misfiring.
And when you see the film, when you actually see Jennifer struggling, it's just, she is like two different people. The person before and the person after.
She's paralysed on the floor at one point, and her husband's trying to pick her up, and she just cannot get up off the floor. And she's saying, keep filming, keep filming. And he said, this is the most ungentlemanly thing I've ever done in my life. And she said, just keep the cameras rolling.
And what do you want to do with this film, Claire?
Well, it's as parents, really, our needs are twofold. We need more research. We need doctors to recognise this illness. And one of the reasons that Jennifer Brea started filming herself in the first place was because she wanted to be able to take this footage to the doctors and say, look, this is how I am. This is what it means when I tell you I couldn't get up off the floor. And that's what they need. They seem to need to see this. And so we want to get more research, more engagement from people about asking for more research. And the other thing that we need is we need people that we live with around us just to support us and to not make us feel that we have to justify how we're parenting our children and whether or not we're pandering to some school phobia. We need them to see that this is a genuine illness. And I believe that by changing how people feel about ME will actually change how they deal with it and how they see it and what they then ask for.
So you're going to show this in Emma's school?
Yes, so there's lots of people like me and my friend Anna, we're showing this film together. are showing this film in cinemas, theatres all around the world, literally all around the world, desperate to show people what it's like to have ME, what people have to deal with every day, and not just in their daily lives, but living with the stigma, what lack of research actually means for them.
This film made a big impression on you as well,
It
Fran,
did.
when you watched it, and
Yes.
you went on the case to sort of find out a bit more about this.
Definitely, yeah. I completely, I felt immediately how connected I felt to Jen. To make something like this and make me feel that I wasn't alone, considering it's been a good couple of years since I was at the worst of my illness. Automatically I realised that there was so many other people that out there that suffer with this. And Emma, I don't know if this will help you or Claire, I spoke to Jen and she had this message.
I'm pleased that NICE are reviewing their guidelines on ME.
Maybe not this
and
message.
Not that one.
I don't think she's
Sorry.
Scottish.
I don't think she's Scottish. Sorry, my apologies. So this is what Fern
Take
has
it
got
away.
for you.
I think to young people with ME like Emma, I would say that I know that it is really hard and this is not, what any of us would have wanted, but I think that there are treatments that are coming. There are treatments that are already here, and I do think that many of them can help people live a much higher quality of life, and that, eventually, in the not too distant future, I really do believe that the research is going to help us unravel the basic mechanisms of this condition. I don't know how poorly Emma is, but I do think that, even though I have to live a very different type of life than the one that I expected, even with my disabilities, I'm still able to live a good life and to live a life of meaning and a purpose. And I think that is possible, and I've seen people do it. I think that there is hope for life now, and also hope for getting much, much better in the future as we get access to more and more treatment.
Award-winning documentary maker with her own message for you.
Yes. Thank you, Jennifer.
I know, I had a little bit of fangirl moment. I was like, oh my gosh, hi Jen, how are you?
I'll tweet her later.
A lot of people have been.
I think Jennifer's is just been so inspiring for me, because it's very hard when you've got a daughter who you thought, like Jennifer, was going to swallow the world whole. And by watching people like her, if you ever get the chance to watch her TED Talk, it's just incredible. And you just know that whatever happens for Emma, whatever her future is, she will carve out her path. Even if she has to live with this forever, she will succeed at what she wants to do. And I can see that in Jennifer, and it gives me hope for Emma.
We're going to return to this, aren't we?
Definitely. I mean, we had so many calls come through, all wanting and saying that there's not a particular group, especially as our caller earlier said, over the age of 60. So we're hoping to join forces, bring people together and get an expert on shortly.
So what we're going to do, we're going to do a full Ask the Expert on ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. We will sort out a date. It will be in the very, very near future because I really want to get the momentum of this. So
definitely.
I think looking at our diary ahead, within the next couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we will do an Ask the Expert slot on this. Claire, thank you for you're desperate to get something in. Go on.
I just want to mention to people that the film that we have been talking about is going to be screened at Thorndon Hall in Chandlersford on a week on Friday, so that's the 2nd of March at 7:30. Tickets are £5, and we want everyone to come. We want people with ME who want to feel part of this movement. We want people who want to support friends and family to come, but the people we want most of all are the ones that don't believe in the illness.
Come and have a look.
Come and have a look.
Come and have a look.
Because I honestly don't think you're going to walk out of that theatre at the end of the film and think that was a waste of time.
Claire, thank you for coming in. Emma, thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this, because I know it's been a tough day for you, so really appreciate you being here. Thank you. And as soon as we've got our date for our Ask the Expert, I'll let you know.